The stranded engineer DR. Elena Vasquez pressed her palm against the cracked viewport of a research vessel and watched the last wisps of atmosphere escape into the void. The emergency lights cast everything in an eerie red glow, and the constant hiss of failing life support systems counted down the minutes until her small world became uninhabitable. Most people would panic. Most people would send out desperate distress calls and pray for rescue that might never come. Elena pulled out her tablet and began calculating the atmospheric composition of the asteroid she'd crashed into. The impact had been sudden. One moment she was conducting a routine survey of potential terraforming sites in the Outer Rim, and the next a debris field from an old battle had torn through her ship's navigation array. The emergency landing had been rough but survivable. Now, stranded on a barren rock in the middle of nowhere, Elena faced the kind of situation that would break most spacefaring species. She smiled as she worked. This was exactly the kind of challenge that made her love her job. The asteroid was small, maybe 3 kilometers across, with a thin atmosphere composed mostly of methane and trace elements. The surface temperature hovered around -40 degrees Celsius. Most species would consider it a death sentence. Elena saw it as a puzzle waiting to be solved. She gathered her emergency supplies and began setting up a temporary shelter near a natural depression in the rock. The work was methodical, precise. Every movement served a purpose. She erected a basic atmospheric processor, connected it to her suit's backup power cell, and began the slow process of creating a breathable environment. That was when they found her. The first sign was a shadow passing overhead. Elena looked up to see a ship unlike anything in human space. It was angular, crystalline, looking more like a grown structure than something built. The hull seemed to pulse with internal light, and weapon ports glowed with barely contained energy. HFY Empire. Elena recognized the design from intelligence briefings, silicon-based life forms who had been expanding aggressively through this sector for the past decade. They considered carbon-based life forms inferior, weak, unworthy of the resources they consumed. The ship landed with surprising grace, and figures emerged from what Elena assumed was an airlock. They moved like living architecture, their crystalline bodies refracting the dim light of the distant star. Each one stood nearly 3 meters tall, with limbs that could reconfigure themselves for different tasks. They were beautiful in an alien way, and absolutely terrifying. Commander ZYX stepped forward, her body a deep blue crystal shot through with veins of silver. When she spoke, her voice resonated through Elena's emergency comm system, a sound like wind chimes in a hurricane. Carbon form, ZYX announced, her tone carrying the weight of absolute authority. You will cease your activities and submit to questioning. Elena looked up from her atmospheric processor, wiped a bead of sweat from her forehead, and nodded politely. Hi there, Dr. Elena Vasquez, Earth Terraforming Consortium. Just give me about 10 more minutes to get this stabilized, and I'll be right with you. She turned back to her work. The silence that followed was profound. Elena could hear the hum of her equipment, the whisper of gas being processed and filtered, the distant crackling of cosmic radiation hitting the asteroid surface. What she couldn't hear was any response from the Kethvar. She glanced over her shoulder. All 6 of them were standing exactly where they had been, but their posture had changed. They looked confused, which Elena hadn't thought was possible for a species that communicated through harmonic resonance. Did you not hear the command? ZYX finally asked. Oh, I heard you, Elena said, adjusting a flow valve. But this processor needs constant monitoring for the first 15 minutes, or the whole system could cascade failure. Then we'd all be standing around in methane soup, and nobody wants that. You dare ignore a direct order from the Kethvar Empire? Elena finished her calibration and stood, brushing dust off her knees. She was barely half the height of the smallest Kethvar soldier, but she met ZYX multifaceted gaze without flinching. Look, I'm sure you're very impressive and all, she said conversationally, but right now, I'm more concerned with not suffocating than I am with Empire protocol. You want to question me? Great, let's talk. But I'm going to keep working while we do it. She moved to the next piece of equipment, a water reclamation unit that would extract moisture from the asteroid's mineral matrix. The Kethvar followed her, their heavy steps sending tremors through the ground. Your species, ZYX Tal said slowly, they fear us. Ships flee when they detect our approach. Colonies evacuate. Entire worlds, rather than face our might. Makes sense, Elena agreed, connecting power cables. You're clearly superior in terms of technology and individual physical capability. Most rational beings would run from a fight they couldn't win. Yet you remain. Elena paused in her work and looked at the commander with genuine curiosity. Where exactly would I run to? My ship's dead, we're in the middle of nowhere, and this rock has maybe 6 hours of usable atmosphere without my equipment. Running seems counterproductive. You could beg for mercy. Could I? Elena tilted her head. Would that work? ZYX Stal's form shifted slightly, colors rippling through her crystalline structure. No. Then why waste the time? Elena shrugged and went back to work. I'd rather spend my last few hours doing something useful. One of the other Kethvar stepped forward, weapon systems beginning to charge with a high-pitched whine. Commander, this carbon form shows insufficient respect. Perhaps a demonstration of our capabilities would correct its attitude. That's her capabilities, Elena corrected without looking up. And demonstration away. Just try not to hit the atmospheric processor. I'm pretty fond of breathing. The soldier looked to ZYX Tal for orders, but the commander raised a crystalline hand for patience. She was studying Elena with the intensity of a scientist examining a new specimen. What are you doing? ZYX Tal asked. Building a habitat, Elena replied, as if it should be obvious. This asteroid has decent mineral content, the gravity's light, but workable, and with the right atmospheric mix, it could support life for months if necessary. You intend to live here. I intend to survive here, Elena corrected. Humans are remarkably good at surviving in places we probably shouldn't. It's kind of our thing. She gestured to the equipment taking shape around them. In just the past hour, Elena had created the beginnings of a livable environment from nothing but emergency supplies and raw materials. The atmospheric processor hummed steadily. The water reclamation unit was already producing its first few drops of precious liquid, and she was working on a basic shelter that would protect against radiation and temperature extremes. Your ship carries terraforming equipment, ZYX Tal observed. Some, Elena agreed, but most of this is improvised. Humans learn early that you can't count on having the right tool for the job, so you learn to make do with what you have. She stood and wiped her hands on a rag, looking around at her work with satisfaction. Give me a week with these materials, and I could have a garden growing. Give me a month, and this place could support a small research station. You speak as if you expect to live that long. Elena met the commander's gaze again, and for the first time, ZYX Tal saw something that made her internal resonators skip a frequency. It wasn't fear or defiance. It was confidence. Quiet, unshakable confidence. Commander, Elena said gently, I'm from a species that looked at the empty space between stars and decided to live there. We saw worlds covered in poison gas and turned them into gardens. We found dead rocks in the void and made them into homes for billions of people. This little asteroid. She gestured around them. This is just Tuesday for a human engineer. The Kethvar soldiers exchanged harmonic bursts of communication, frequencies too complex for Elena's translator to parse. But she could read body language well enough to know that something had changed. They were no longer looking at her like prey. They were looking at her like a puzzle. You will come with us, ZYX Tal declared finally. The High Council will want to study this confidence of yours. Elena nodded agreeably. Sure thing. Just let me set this processor to autonomous mode first. Hate to waste all that work. As she made her final adjustments, Elena couldn't help but smile. She'd crashed on a dead rock, been captured by the galaxy's most feared empire, and was about to be taken aboard an alien warship for purposes unknown. And somehow she was looking forward to seeing what happened next. That was the thing about humans. They didn't just survive impossible situations. They found ways to make those situations interesting. The test of Wills the Kethvar command ship was a marvel of crystalline engineering. The corridors pulsed with bioluminescent patterns, and the walls themselves seemed to grow and reshape as Elena walked through them. She found herself genuinely impressed despite her circumstances. The ship was less a vessel and more a living organism perfectly adapted for the silicon-based beings who inhabited it. Elena was escorted to what she assumed was a holding cell, though it looked more like a greenhouse designed by aliens with very different ideas about comfort. The walls were transparent crystal, the floor was a mesh of interlocking geometric shapes, and the atmosphere was carefully controlled to support carbon-based life. It was clearly designed to contain biological specimens. She began examining the environmental controls immediately. The carbon form continues its strange behavior, reported Subcommander RYXTH, watching Elena through the cell's monitoring systems. It shows no signs of distress. Commander ZYXTAL studied the displays with growing fascination. The human had been aboard their ship for 6 hours now, and instead of the expected fear response, she seemed to be treating her confinement as an engineering challenge. What is she doing now? ZYXTAL asked. Unknown. She has been manipulating the atmospheric regulators for the past hour. On the screen, Elena finished her work and stepped back to admire her handiwork. The cell's atmosphere now circulated in a complex pattern that somehow made the space feel larger and more comfortable. She had also managed to adjust the lighting to create distinct zones within the chamber. Fascinating, ZYXTAL murmured. Prepare the first assessment. The tests began the next day. The Kethvar had developed a series of environmental challenges designed to break the will of captured enemies. They would place subjects in increasingly hostile conditions and observe how quickly they succumbed to despair. Elena was transported to a chamber where the temperature had been dropped to well below freezing. Ice crystals formed on the walls, and her breath misted in the frigid air. Previous subjects had typically lasted less than an hour before begging for mercy. Elena examined the heating elements that had been deliberately disabled, traced the power conduits, and began systematically rewiring the system using components from her own equipment. Within 2 hours, she had not only restored heat to the chamber, but improved the circulation system. Temperature regulation restored, she reported cheerfully to the monitoring systems. Also, I think there might be a more efficient routing for the primary power grid. Want me to take a look? The second test involved toxic atmosphere. Elena was placed in a chamber filled with corrosive gases that would burn the lungs of most carbon-based life forms. She was given a basic rebreather with limited power. Elena spent the first hour mapping the air circulation patterns, then used her engineering knowledge to create localized clean air pockets. By the end of the day, she had rigged a crude but effective atmospheric scrubber that turned the death trap into a merely unpleasant workspace. The carbon form has neutralized the toxins, RYXTH reported, disbelief resonating through his harmonic patterns. The chamber now reads as safe for extended habitation. Impossible, declared High Counselor Vexera, her ancient crystalline form crackling with agitation. No biological entity can adapt so quickly to hostile environments. But Elena continued to prove them wrong. In the water deprivation test, she built a condensation collection system from spare parts. When they deprived her of food, she identified edible compounds in the ship's waste processing systems and created a crude but nutritious meal. Every challenge they presented, every impossible situation, Elena met with calm competence and innovative solutions. More concerning to the Kethvar hierarchy was the effect Elena was having on their soldiers. The guards assigned to watch her had begun asking questions about her methods. Some had even requested permission to observe her work more closely. Subcommander RYXTH was particularly intrigued. He found himself lingering at Elena's cell during his off-duty periods, watching her work with tools and materials that should have been useless to a being of her size and apparent limitations. Human Elena, he said one day, his harmonic voice adjusted to frequencies her translator could handle. Your species, they are all capable of these adaptations. Elena looked up from her latest project. a device that seemed to be extracting useful materials from the cell's own structure. To varying degrees, sure. Humans are generalists. We're not the fastest or strongest or most specialized species, but we're really good at figuring out how to survive in places we don't belong. You speak of your limitations as if they were strengths, aren't they? Elena asked genuinely. Look, your people are magnificently adapted for high-energy environments. Your crystalline structure is probably perfect for your homeworld's conditions. But that specialization comes with trade-offs, right? You can't easily adapt to environments that fall outside your optimal parameters. RYXTH's form shifted colors, a sign of deep thought among his species. This is true. We require significant technological support to operate in most carbon-compatible environments. Humans are the opposite, Elena explained, returning to her work. We evolved on a world with constantly changing conditions. Ice ages, volcanic periods, climate shifts that would extinct most species. So, we developed the ability to adapt quickly to almost anything. It's not that we're superior, we're just flexible. And this flexibility, it applies to more than just environmental adaptation. Elena's eyes lit up with enthusiasm. Oh, absolutely. Technology, social structures, problem-solving approaches, even art and music. Humans are chaos specialists. We thrive in situations where the rules keep changing. Word of these conversations began spreading through the ship. The idea that biological adaptation could be a strength rather than a weakness was revolutionary to the Kethvar mindset. Their entire culture was built on the concept of achieving perfection through specialization. High Counselor Vexera decided more drastic measures were needed. Elena was transported to the ship's environmental testing facility, a chamber capable of recreating the conditions of any known world. They set it to simulate the surface of a gas giant's moon, crushing atmospheric pressure, radiation levels that would sterilize most life forms, and gravitational fields that shifted randomly. This will break her, Vexera declared. No biological entity can adapt to this level of environmental chaos. Elena was given basic survival equipment and told she had 1 week to establish a viable habitat or face termination. As the chamber door sealed behind her, the environmental systems began their deadly dance of ever-changing conditions. For the first day, Elena simply observed. She mapped the pattern of gravitational shifts, measured radiation levels, and analyzed the atmospheric composition. Then she began to work to by day 3. She had built a shelter that could adjust its structure in response to gravitational changes. By day 5, she had created a power system that actually drew energy from the radiation bombardment. And by the end of the week, she had established not just a viable habitat, but a thriving microecosystem. The Kethvar monitoring team watched in stunned silence as Elena emerged from the chamber looking healthier than when she had entered. Report, she said cheerfully, handing over a detailed analysis of the chamber systems. I've also identified 17 improvements you could make to increase efficiency and reduce power consumption. The random gravitational shifts are actually pretty wasteful from an energy standpoint. Commander ZYX Tal studied the report, her crystalline structure flickering with rapid harmonic patterns. Elena had not only survived conditions that would challenge their most advanced technology, she had improved upon their own engineering. How? ZYX Tal asked finally. Elena wiped her hands on her coveralls and shrugged. Pattern recognition, mostly. Everything has patterns, even chaos. You just have to look at it from the right angle. Your species thinks in terms of optimization for specific conditions. Humans think in terms of adaptation to changing conditions. Different approaches, both valid. You speak as if there is no conflict between our peoples. Why should there be? Elena asked, You're good at what you do. We're good at what we do. Seems like there might be room for both approaches in a galaxy this big. As Elena was escorted back to her cell, she noticed something that made her smile. The Kethvar soldiers were no longer moving in perfect formation. They were displaying individual curiosity, asking questions among themselves, looking at their own ship systems with new eyes. She had done more than survive their tests. She had introduced them to a completely different way of thinking about problems. And among a species that valued perfection above all else, that was perhaps the most dangerous thing she could have done. The revolution in Kethvar thinking had begun with a single human engineer who refused to see impossible situations as anything other than interesting puzzles, and Elena was just getting started. The Alliance proposal to summons came at dawn, ship time. Elena was escorted through corridors she had not seen before, deeper into the command vessel's core, where the most senior Kethvar conducted their affairs. The architecture here was different, older, with crystalline formations that pulsed with the slow rhythm of deep thought. She was brought before the High Council itself, 7 ancient beings whose crystalline bodies had grown to enormous size over their centuries of life. At their center sat Emperor Fexmore, a being so old and vast that small ecosystems had begun growing in the crevices of his form. Human Elena Vasquez. The Emperor's voice resonated through the chamber like distant thunder. You have disrupted our understanding of biological capabilities. Elena inclined her head respectfully. Thank you, Your Majesty. Though I should point out that I haven't really done anything unusual by human standards. I've just been solving problems as they came up. Precisely, rumbled High Counselor Vexera. Your species' approach to challenges defies all logical frameworks. You should have broken under our assessments. But I didn't, Elena said simply, and that's bothering you because it challenges some fundamental assumptions about how biological life works. Emperor Fexmore leaned forward, the movement sending harmonic resonances through the entire chamber. Explain. Elena took a deep breath. This was the moment she had been preparing for since her capture. Everything she had done, every test she had passed, had been leading to this conversation. Your Majesty, the Kethvar Empire is built on a beautiful principle: achieve perfection through specialization. You've mastered energy manipulation, crystal growth technology, harmonic communication, and countless other fields. Your ships are marvels of engineering. Your society is organized with incredible efficiency. Several council members shifted with what Elena recognized as pleased harmonics. But she continued, that same specialization that makes you so powerful also creates blind spots. You see biological life as inherently inferior because we're not optimized for specific conditions the way you are. You assume that because we're adaptable, we must also be weak. Are you not? Challenged Counselor Keth9, her young crystalline form crackling with aggressive energy. We're different, Elena replied. Imagine if you encountered a problem that couldn't be solved through specialization. Something that required constant adaptation, multiple approaches, the ability to fail and try again quickly. Your perfected systems might struggle with that kind of chaos. Hypothetical scenarios are meaningless, Vexera declared. Elena smiled. Actually, you're facing one right now. The silence that followed was profound. Elena could feel the attention of 7 of the most powerful beings in known space, focused entirely on her. Explain. Emperor Fexmore commanded. The Devourers, Elena said simply. The harmonic response was immediate and unmistakable. Fear. Elena had studied enough Kethvar communication patterns to recognize it, even filtered through 7 layers of imperial dignity. The Devourers were a plague that had been spreading through the Outer Rim for the past 5 years. They consumed matter at the molecular level, breaking down everything they encountered and converting it to more of themselves. No weapon seemed to affect them, no defense could stop them, and they adapted to every countermeasure almost instantly. You know of the Devourers? Fexmore asked, his voice tight with controlled concern. Humanity has been tracking them for 3 years, Elena replied. We've lost 2 colonies to them, and our scientists have been working around the clock to understand them. Then you know they cannot be stopped, Vexera said bitterly. They adapt to every form of attack, learn from every defense. They are the ultimate expression of biological adaptation. Exactly, Elena said. They're so good at adapting that they've become unstoppable through any single approach. But what if you didn't use a single approach? She moved to the center of the chamber, where a holographic display materialized at her gesture. The image showed a complex molecular structure constantly shifting and changing. This is a devourer cell, Elena explained. Notice how it reconfigures itself in response to different stimuli. It's incredibly efficient at adaptation, but there's a pattern to how it changes. Our scientists identified 17 distinct adaptation cycles. We are aware of this research, Counselor Keth9 said dismissively. It has yielded no useful results. Because you're thinking like specialists, Elena replied. You're trying to find the one perfect weapon that will stop them. But what if the solution isn't one perfect approach, but dozens of imperfect ones? She manipulated the display to show a new simulation. Humans don't fight devourers the way you do. We hit them with everything at once. Chemical attacks, energy weapons, physical barriers, electromagnetic pulses, even biological agents. Each attack is inadequate by itself, but the devourers can't adapt to all of them simultaneously. The Emperor leaned back, his massive form settling with a sound like distant rock slides. You claim to have found a solution to the devourer threat? Not found, Elena corrected. Developed. And not just humans. We've been working with the Altarian Collective, the Free Traders Union, even some of the independent AI networks. Each species contributes their own approach to the problem. Impossible, Vexera declared. Coordination between multiple species on that scale would be chaotic, Elena finished, inefficient, messy, full of contradictions and competing approaches. Exactly the kind of environment where humans excel. She changed the display to show battle footage from humanity's most recent encounter with the Devourers, instead of the typical, orderly formations favored by most military forces. The human fleet moved in seemingly random patterns. Ships of different designs and origins worked together in ways that should have been impossible to coordinate. This is madness, Counselor Keth9 observed. This is jazz? Elena replied with a grin. Improvisation within a structure. Multiple independent voices creating something larger than any of them could manage alone. The footage showed the human fleet successfully containing and eventually destroying a devourer swarm that had consumed 3 star systems. You destroyed them, Emperor Thexmore said, and for the first time, Elena heard something like awe in his harmonic voice. We did, but here's the thing, we couldn't have done it alone. The Altarians provided the gravitational manipulation technology. The Free Traders had the manufacturing capacity to build weapons fast enough to stay ahead of devourer adaptation. The AIs handled the computational load of coordinating thousands of simultaneous attacks. Elena turned to face the full council. Humanity's strength isn't that we're the best at any one thing. Our strength is that we're really good at getting other people to work together, even when they don't think they should. You propose an alliance, Thexmore stated. I propose a partnership, Elena corrected. The Kethvar Empire has capabilities that would be invaluable in the fight against the Devourers. Your energy manipulation technology could create weapons that adapt faster than anything we've developed. Your harmonic communication could coordinate attacks across multiple star systems instantly. And in return, Elena's expression grew serious. In return, humanity offers you something your empire has never had. The ability to adapt when your perfect systems encounter something they weren't designed for. We can teach you how to be imperfect efficiently. Counselor Vexera's crystalline form pulsed with agitated harmonics. You ask us to abandon the principles that made our civilization great. I'm asking you to expand them, Elena replied. Perfection is beautiful, but it's also brittle. Adaptability is messy, but it's also anti-fragile. Combine them, and you get something neither could achieve alone. The debate that followed lasted for hours. Elena found herself defending not just the practical benefits of cooperation, but the philosophical implications of what she was proposing. She was asking one of the galaxy's most rigid civilizations to embrace uncertainty and chaos as tools rather than enemies. Finally, Emperor Thexmore raised a crystalline appendage for silence. Human Elena Vasquez, he said formally, the High Council will consider your proposal. But first, we require a demonstration. What kind of demonstration? You will work with our engineers to design a joint response to a Devourer incursion in the Kepler 442 system. You will have access to both human and Kethvar technologies. If your approach proves successful, we will discuss formal alliance terms. Elena felt her heart racing. This was the opportunity she had been hoping for since her capture. I accept, but I'll need my research team and permission to contact the other alliance species. Granted, Thexmore declared. Commander ZYX Tau will serve as your liaison and joint mission commander. As Elena was escorted from the chamber, she caught ZYX Tau's multifaceted gaze. The commander's crystalline form had shifted to colors Elena had learned to recognize as curiosity and anticipation. Human Elena, ZYX Tau said as they walked, "Do you truly believe this partnership can succeed?" Elena smiled. "Commander, I've spent my career turning dead rocks into gardens. Building bridges between species who think completely differently? That's just another terraforming project." 3 months later, the first joint human Kethvar colony was established in the ruins of a world the Devourers had consumed. Where there had been only molecular dust, Elena and her team grew gardens. Where there had been dead space, Kethvar crystal gardens created beautiful, functional cities. The colony was imperfect, chaotic, full of compromises between radically different approaches to life and technology. It was also alive, growing, adapting to challenges that neither species could have faced alone. And when the next Devourer swarm appeared at the edge of human space, it found not a collection of isolated civilizations, but a network of allies, each contributing their unique strengths to a defense that was greater than the sum of its parts. Elena stood on the observation deck of the Joint Command Station, watching human ships maneuver alongside Kethvar crystal vessels in patterns that would have been impossible to imagine just a year before. The galaxy had become a more interesting place, and for a human engineer who specialized in making impossible things work, that was exactly the way she liked it.